How do I answer 12-mark questions in RPE? Help. You can watch this as a revision video to help you, or you can treat it as a lesson. Teachers, you could use it to pause it at appropriate points and there'll be activities. Here's a 12-mark statement that you'll never get, but we can still use it for this revision video to practice the skills of 12 markers. Some of these video games are a bit out of date, but never mind about that, and hopefully no one will sue me for putting up different brands here. They're still getting exposure, so it shouldn't matter too much. So we're going to take this statement and evaluate it to look at how to do 12 markers. So here's the statement we're going to be evaluating for this imaginary 12 marker, and if you're doing this in a lesson or want to treat it as a revision activity, maybe with even a friend or two, you can do these activities. But essentially, for every 12-mark question, you're thinking, why could I agree, or why could someone agree, and why could someone disagree with the statement, aren't you? And then you're coming up with your own reasoned conclusion about what you think about the 12 marker statement, which is the trickiest part, isn't it? We're going to look at how to do that. So no matter what the statement is, I know this one isn't a religious statement, but you can still use it as an example because we're going to practice the same skills. No matter what the statement is, you will always see these words afterwards. Evaluate the statement, and then in your answer you should give reasoned arguments in support of the statement. So why would someone agree to support it? Reasoned arguments to support a different point of view. Why would someone disagree? You must refer to religious arguments. Now that is such a key thing, Year 11s, because sometimes people forget to do that, and it's such a shame because you'll lose points and marks. It's a religious studies exam, guys, so you need to refer to religious arguments, even if the statement doesn't look like it's to do with religion on the face of it. You've learned about its subject matter with reference to religion, so use the religious teachings, the religious arguments, the religious points you know. May refer to non-religious arguments on paper 2 of the GCSE. So that's where you can bring in atheism, your own views if you're an atheist or an agnostic, and should reach a justified conclusion. That is the most important part that the examiner is going to be looking out for if you're aiming high to give you the mark. Here is the mark scheme that the examiners will be looking at, where they're trawling through those stacks of papers, or what are they? Those screens and screens and screens worth of questions that they've been electronically sent, which is very mind-numbing and boring. So you want to make your answer interesting and well-reasoned so it jumps out at them and they can give it the marks. We're obviously aiming, we're most interested in the top band, because what's lower down is just a less well-done version of those things. So I know you're not all aiming for the top band, but I'm going to look especially at that because it contains the even better version of what's lower down. So they ultimately want a well-argued response, a reasoned consideration of different points of view, and logical chains of reasoning leading to judgment supported by knowledge and understanding of relevant evidence and information. What does that mean in English? Well, if you translate it from examiner speak, they want you to give a conclusion about the statement, say what you think, in other words, and back it up with evidence showing that you've looked at either side of the argument. All right, so how do I do that? How do I write an answer that does all those things? Let's see. So say you had the imaginary statement that we've got about video games and reading. What you want is you want points that would agree and points that would disagree. So here are some suggestions for that statement. We won't spend too long on them. If you're doing this in class, you could do this exercise yourself. But why could reading be better? Well, because reading's like exercise for the mind. Skipping to row 3, reading can be fun. And then maybe a negative statement about the other side. Video games, on the other hand, can be addictive. I'll come back to the religious one. On the other side, though, disagreeing with the statement, video games have all sorts of positive benefits. Many people just find video games more fun, don't they? And reading is a more solitary activity because you can group read in book clubs and things, but it's not quite the same, is it? It doesn't have the same immediacy. So those would be reasons to agree and disagree with the statement. That's what you need to come up with as soon as you see your 12-mark statement to put into your answer. And then second row here, just underlining the point, don't forget the religious points. I know it's a bit of a stretch when you're talking about reading and video games, but for example, if that was the statement, you could say religious people are big on books, aren't they? Because they have sacred texts which they have to read. And it used to be, that the priestly castes in society were the ones that preserved reading and literacy and knowledge in that form. So you could argue religion and reading in a way go together. So religions are going to be in favour of reading. On the other hand, religions teach that rest is important, isn't it? Sabbath rest in Judaism and Christianity, and you could rest how you want. Fun is part of God's plan, and if God likes fun, that's what I'm trying to say. You can argue that within religion too, so that could be on the video game side. Kind of irrelevant, isn't it? But I'm just trying to illustrate here. You want points to agree and disagree with the statement in a 12 marker, and you want to mention religion, guys. Make sure you're talking about those religious teachings which you do know. Don't get tricked and caught out by a statement, that's on human rights or war or whatever, where you don't actually talk about the religious teachings which you know. Now, loads of different memory words for 12 markers out there. Don't use it if it's not helpful for you, but the one they use in my school is face peel. Can't remember who came up with it originally. Hopefully it's not copyrighted. Everyone uses peel, don't they? Face is not a copyrighted word because we all have a face and it's in the dictionary. So never mind too much about that. What does it stand for? Well, you guessed it. Face is the overall shape of the answer. You want a paragraph for. So why would someone be for the statement? And then A, paragraph against, so that's your agree, disagree. Then C and E kind of go together. A paragraph which is the conclusion, making sure you've got your evaluation. That might stretch to 2 if you're aiming really high and you're a strong candidate pushing for an 8 or a 9. You might even end up writing a 4-paragraph essay. But at least 3 paragraphs in a 12 marker. For, against, and conclusion. Some people do the evaluation at the end. However, from what we know, the best answer is really going to be evaluating all the way through. So peel is for what goes in each paragraph, doesn't it? And that's your point, evidence, explain, link, as you know from English or other subjects. However, if you want to make it really strong, you might want to think about making the second E also an E for evaluation. So point for this side, whether it's for or against your conclusion, the evidence to back it up. Yeah, and as you're explaining it, if you can, evaluate it too, so that you're threading your argument through the whole answer, and the examiner can really see you've made a judgment all the way through and by the end. Don't forget, by the way, it's 2 peels per paragraph. I know you're used to doing them as a single peel per paragraph, but 2 peels per paragraph if you want enough material in this answer to get you up to the highest level. And that would take you about 15 minutes if you're writing solidly. So not everyone's going to want to do it this way. Another one I like is just sock peel, or even sock peevel, the evil sock. Sock is some, others, conclusion. So for your overall shape, some would say this, paragraph, others would say this, paragraph, conclusion, I think, paragraph, and then peevel is just peel, but reminding you that the second E is for evaluating. If you like that, take it too. Didn't have time to make a PowerPoint for that, never mind. So, on the agree side, let's go through it again. You want to write a paragraph for. Why would someone agree with the statement? So if it was video games and reading, then you'd be saying something like that, something like this. Some people would agree with the statement because reading is like exercise for the mind, yada, 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 yada. Again, if you're doing this in class or doing a practice 12 marker now, I wouldn't, by the way, practice it right now with the reading and video games one. This is just an example. Do it for one of the 12 markers that you've got in front of you from your revision guide or your own revision or the textbook or whatever. So you're practicing it with a question you might actually get. But you do your first paragraph for. If you're doing this by yourself or in lesson, now's a good time to pause and actually have a go at planning, writing or at least planning that paragraph. And don't forget to do it twice, of course, as in 2 points, 2 points in the paragraph, and mentioning that religious teaching. Then exactly the same for disagree, isn't it? So then you would write, other people would disagree with the statement because, or something like that, a similar sentence starter for your second paragraph, and do just the same. Peel that. And it might look like this if you were doing it about reading and video games, something like this. So now's a good time to practice that. Pause and practice if you're having a go at writing your own practice 12 marker in class or at home. And then the tricky bit, but the bit that gets you the most marks that the examiner's really going to be looking out for. Your third paragraph, your conclusion with your own evaluation. Maybe you've evaluated a bit along the way. Great if you have. If you haven't, never mind. Let's pack it into the last paragraph to really show the person marking this that you deserve the marks. So after you've explained each side, you get the most marks in 12 marker for justifying your conclusion, backing up what you're saying, explaining why you think what you think. The best way to justify it is to make new points about the arguments you've already discussed. Okay, so in other words, some people think this, other people think this. I think this because of my opinion on what I've already said. So you're not just pulling something out of the hat that's brand new, but you're actually referring back to an argument that you listed before and either saying why you're on the side of it or why you're against it, adding on new things. That's the hardest skill. But if you can get that, not only will it get you a good grade in your GCSE RE, that is such a useful critical analytical skill for your life. There's actually a point, I hope, to these GCSEs and this subject, guys. It's a very useful skill. So it might look something like this. Here's an example on the video games and reading one. Overall, I disagree with the statement because I am not persuaded by the argument that reading increases intelligence. What if someone has no interest in increasing their intelligence? But also, some people may not enjoy video games, so the reverse of the statement is not true either. So what this example little bit of writing does is it's referring to an argument that was already talked about, something that was already made, and then giving a judgment on it. It's like you're commenting. Think of football and commentary. You're commentating even on what you have already said to show that you've thought about it, you've formed an opinion on it. Yeah, it's like just giving your opinion, not just about the statement. Any old person could do that, can't they? But your opinion on the arguments you've already looked at in the statement, to do with the statement. So if you're doing that, you're probably going to be using phrases like "this is a strong argument" or "this is a weak argument because," or "I agree with this argument" or "disagree with this argument because." And that word "because" is what it all hinges on, and it's what you put after the "because" that's the marks. Okay, so if you're doing this with a friend or in class, you can do these activities. Yeah, you can swap back. More importantly, here's a way to illustrate this and to help you do it even better. If you've got a list of agree-disagree points, say 2 on each side. Yeah, you don't need 4 on each side. I've just loaded this up with loads of examples to show you, but you want 2 on each side really. At kind of, yeah, that will be enough to get you all the marks. What you could do is you could rate them and just say, just in a number out of 10, what do I think of each of those arguments? You could do it for yourself for these statements or for the ones that you come up with in a 12-marker plan. That's just an illustration of how you will think different things about different arguments, and that can give you a prompt to help you with your evaluation. And you turn those ratings into evaluation in written form, into prose. So a sentence starter for the third paragraph might look something like this. Overall, I agree or disagree with the statement because. Or concluding, I agree or disagree with the statement because. And then you do 2 appeals to back up, justify your conclusion, make your case. So you do this in the way that I've explained a second ago, but you could be doing something like this. Explaining why you rate one or more of the arguments to be strong. Explain why you rate one or more of the arguments to be weak, or you could do both of those things, one after the other. But even more than that, if you're really stuck, as a last resort sort of safety net, I would say, another sneaky tactic could be to make another point for your side of the argument and bring it out of the bag at the end. That's what I would say if you're really struggling to make your mind up and make an evaluative judgment about what you've already talked about on each side. If that's just too hard, what I'd say as a last resort, it's not the ideal. If you don't have to do this, brilliant, don't do it. But if you just want to make another point on your side, that can look like evaluation as well. All right, but don't worry too much about that, because if you can actually evaluate the arguments you've already talked about on each side, that's even better. So that would take you about 5 minutes to write, wouldn't it? In the exam, I suggest doing a little plan of the 12 markers first, like jotting down 2 agree points, 2 disagree points, and then they're in front of you for you to analyse and evaluate and decide which you think is strongest and weakest. And also, if you've got time, well, try and leave time to do a quick proofread at the end, maybe even a space check, spelling, punctuation, apostrophes, capitals, and editing for meaning, because you will make little mistakes. You're under a lot of pressure and the adrenaline's firing. And it will just look better to the examiner if you've spell checked it, and you'll get those spag marks where they're relevant as well. So you can do this if you're doing this in class. Here's a way, it's not perfect, this is a very clunky way if you're peer marking to mark the 12 markers. Bit of peer marking scaffolding there for teachers to use. And there you go, that's your whistle-stop tour of how to answer 12 markers. Hopefully you're a bit clearer on this now. Good luck!